It's the starting point of so many recipes, but it seems so easy that I never thought that much about how to actually do it. But properly preheating a pan can be critical to nailing a dish. And it turns out I've been doing a pretty bad job. This is MinuteFood. First, a disclaimer. You know I love disclaimers. I'm explicitly not mentioning coated non-stick pans like Teflon in this video. Not only because I'd like to discourage their use, but also because it's really easy to heat Teflon to the point that it releases dangerous chemicals. So here, I'm talking about other pans you're likely to use on your stovetop. Sometimes you do want to start out with a cool pan, and there's some cool science behind when and why that makes sense. Maybe we'll do a video on that someday. But more often than not, when you're working on the stovetop, you get better results when you start food in a hot pan. And there are two main reasons for that. First, a hot pan helps keep food from sticking by very quickly modifying the structure of molecules in a food in a way that makes them less likely to bond with the metal in a pan. Second, a hot pan develops deliciousness by really quickly evaporating water off a food's surface, kickstarting the Maillard reaction. But in order to use preheating to your advantage, you have to know how quickly a pan heats up and how hot it's getting. And I recently realized that I don't have a great sense of this. So I fell down a rabbit hole and started experimenting. And the first thing I found is that I haven't been preheating anywhere near long enough. Like, here's my go-to carbon steel pan on the medium setting on my gas stove. 2 minutes in, which is probably around the time I'd normally get antsy and start cooking most stuff, the pan was only 200 degrees Fahrenheit, nowhere near hot enough to get big benefits from preheating. It took nearly 4 minutes for the pan to reach 375 degrees. That, of course, doesn't mean that 4 minutes is the right length of time to preheat a pan. First, because you don't necessarily want your pan at 375. Depending on what you're cooking, you might want something a little gentler or something hotter. But also because different pans take different amounts of time to reach the same temperature. All sorts of things can affect the speed at which heat moves through a pan, like how well the material it's made of conducts heat. Heat will travel more slowly through a stainless steel pan than an aluminum pan, and slower still through cast iron and carbon steel. Size matters too. The larger or thicker a pan, the longer it takes heat to move through all that metal. Here's how long it took various pans in my kitchen to preheat to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. But how long it takes to heat up a pan also depends on your setup. So these numbers won't be your numbers. You need to do your own legwork to get a sense of how long it takes to heat your particular pans in your particular kitchen. And then there's the question of how to know when a pan actually reaches whatever temperature you want to cook at. I used to be on team take a wild guess, but there are a lot of much better alternatives. One is obviously a thermometer, which is what I've been using so far in this video. But there's a problem with some thermometers, specifically infrared thermometers. These thermometers don't actually measure surface temperature. They measure how much infrared energy is radiating out of that surface. And sometimes that is a good proxy for surface temperature. Carbon steel and cast iron emit energy really effectively, which you probably know if you've ever held your hand over a screaming hot cast iron pan. The heat you're feeling is basically what an infrared thermometer measures. And in the case of cast iron, it's a pretty reliable indicator for how hot the surface of the pan actually is. Shiny metals, on the other hand, are not good at emitting energy. Their shiny surfaces are better at reflecting the energy of their surroundings. That's why when you hold your hand over a screaming hot stainless steel pan, it won't feel all that hot. And why an infrared thermometer will give a temperature reading that's lower than the pan's actual surface temperature. In nerdy parlance, this feature is called emissivity, and there are some ways you can account for it with an infrared thermometer, which I did for this video, but it's kind of a pain to do it for everyday use. Surface thermometers, which measure the actual temperature of a surface, are more reliable. But as I've played around with these, I found that they take so long to respond to changes in temperature that they're basically useless for preheating. Don't despair though. There are other ways to tell how hot your pan is, and they're way more creative and interesting. One is by dropping a little bit of water in a hot pan. If it just sits there, your pan is less than 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It's below the boiling point of water. If it sizzles and evaporates away, it's somewhere between 212 degrees and 375-ish. But if it bounces into beautiful little dancing balls, it's reached what's called the latent frost point. The the temperature at which the pan is hot enough to immediately vaporize the water at the bottom of the drop. That layer of vapor insulates the rest of the drop from the pan's heat, allowing it to skate along for a long time without evaporating. The exact temperature of water's Leidenfrost point is complicated, but as I've messed around, I tend to see this effect start at around 350 degrees and get really good above 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So based on how a drop of water behaves, you can tell the approximate temperature of your pan. And you can do something similar with a glug of oil. Above about 200 degrees Fahrenheit, the oil will loosen up and get what some people call legs. At around 350 degrees, you'll start to see it shimmer. And somewhere above that, the exact temperature depends on the kind of oil you're using, you'll see the oil start to smoke. We'll link to a good list of smoke points in the description so you'll know what temperature your oil is when you start to see those first few wisps. Butter can give you some temperature clues too. Preheat butter in a cold pan until it foams. At this point, the water inside the butter is boiling, so you know the pan has reached 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the butter starts smoking, you've exceeded its smoke point of 350 degrees. These eyeballing strategies aren't perfect. They give you a ballpark temperature range, but they are reliable enough for the preheating purposes of most home cooks. Just wait until you're in the right range for whatever you're cooking and dive on in. As an added bonus, these visual clues don't require any special equipment or any in-depth knowledge of material science. Eventually, you might get good enough that you don't need any of these cues to have a good sense of your pan's temperature. And maybe you're already there. I have now preheated 44 pans specifically for this video, and I feel like I'm finally getting a feel for how it all works. But I'm gonna keep on using those dancing balls because they're just really freaking cool. And also really hot.
Remember that lovely printable we teased earlier in the episode with good pan temps to use for cooking different foods? Well, it can be yours. Head over to patreon.com/MinuteFood, where you have two awesome options. One, you can join our community and get access to all past and upcoming printables, as well as tons of other great perks for a small recurring membership fee. Or option two, you can skip the membership and buy just the printables you'd like for just $5 each. And remember, any money you spend at our Patreon page goes directly to funding MinuteFood. So not only do you get pan-tastic printables, you get more MinuteFood videos about all your burning cooking questions. And what could be better than that?